The threats are constant. They've increased. The reason I released this letter, this was sent directly to my home, directly to my wife, and it went on to threaten execution, not just of me, but of her and my 5-month-old child. The depravity of what's existing out there, the fact that there are people that literally would come up with this idea of killing a 5-month-old because you disagree with me being on the January 6th committee.
That is some sick stuff. That is Congressman Adam Kinzinger talking about a letter he received on Sunday. He will lead tomorrow's January 6th committee hearing. And my next guest is warning, as more truths about Donald Trump and his attempted coup come out, I fear there will be more irrational anger and threats from people who cannot bear the truth. He also asks this important question. What are Trump supporters so afraid of? Tom Nichols, the author of those very wise words, joins us tonight. He's a professor at the Naval War College at the Harvard Extension School. Tom, when I first saw your headline, I thought, yes, I want to read this personally, but I don't know if I want to bring this on TV because all Trump wants is more attention. But then I read it and I read how important this is. Help us understand, what are Trump supporters so afraid of?
I think they're living with a lot of cognitive dissonance. I mean, think about the dynamic here. Republican officials, Republican Trump officials, from Bill Barr on down, including Republican officials in places like Georgia, come on television. They testify that your worst fears about what Donald Trump are trying to do are true. And the reaction from some of the Trump supporters watching is to threaten Adam Kinzinger and his family. That's another way of saying, stop telling me these things. Stop saying these things out loud, because I think for a lot of these folks, they had just kind of buried it. They want to move on. They know they were conned. They know Trump was awful. They know that there was an attempt at a coup, and they don't want to be reminded of it. And I think that the more that comes out, the angrier they're going to get. And look, that's a normal human reaction. Nobody likes to find out that they were taken, that they were conned, that they were wrong. But in our current political environment, that leads to people saying, I will literally threaten public officials for providing this outlet for the truth.
But here's what's interesting. Rusty Bowers was one of those very brave people who spoke to the committee, who resisted Trump's attempts to push him to change the outcome of the election in the state of Arizona. As a result, he was terrorized. His family was terrorized. And then today, here's what he told the AP. If Trump is the nominee, if he was up against Biden, I'd vote for him again simply because of what he did the first time before COVID. It was so good for the country. What do you think of that? Okay, he shared with us this pressure campaign he experienced from Trump that would break how our democracy works. And in spite of that, he'd vote for him again because he really likes his immigration policy.
But I think, you heard Attorney General Bill Barr say the same thing. Well, I hope he's not the nominee, but if he's the nominee, I'm going to because part of the rationalization, part of the whole infrastructure of self-rationalizing beliefs that I think a lot of folks adopted when Trump became president was, he's terrible. I know he's awful, but Republicans have to control the White House and the Congress because the far left will destroy America. Trump is awful, but he's the only thing, as awful as he is, he's the only thing standing between, America and the abyss. And I think, again, these are rationalizations that people have to adopt for the sake of just kind of getting through the day about why they voted for Donald Trump. But, the case of Bowers is, it's really interesting because there's the people who are terrorizing Bowers agree with him about everything. They just didn't want to hear the truth about this one thing.
But if we don't have free and fair and functioning elections in this country, then does anything else really matter behind it?
Well, it's an argument I've made that if you lose the Constitution, then you lose everything. And I've made this argument to people on the left as well, who say, well, if I don't get the things I want, then, maybe I won't vote. For people on the right and the left, no matter what your policy issues are, if you lose the Constitution, if you lose our democratic system, you lose everything. And I think people like Bowers and Bill Barr are trying to thread this very hypocritical needle where they say, I want a far right candidate to win the election. I hope it's not Trump, but even if it is Trump, as long as it was done legally and constitutionally, I can get behind it, because they just avert their eyes and stop thinking about the fact that what Trump's platform is the next time around will be the destruction of the Constitution.
So is Ron DeSantis the person who solves this for them? Our colleague Steve Kornacki pointed out a new poll showing Ron DeSantis is the preferred candidate in 2024. Is that because he offers all the Trump policies and none of the Trump stank?
Yeah, he's Trump without the mess so far. And I think that there are plenty of Republicans so far. But I think there are plenty of Republicans who want a reason to go back to voting for the Republican Party, because they still believe that it was just a personal issue with Trump and that the rot did not spread right down to the grassroots. And again, I've argued, and I'm a former Republican, I still think of myself as a center-right conservative. I've argued that the Republican Party has to be just voted out down to the grassroots, and that party has to just start over again. But I think for a lot of people, they're looking at somebody like DeSantis and saying, well, if we just get rid of Trump, then all of the other problems in the party, all of this, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Boeberts and the Jim Jordans and all that's not really a problem. It was just about Trump. And then they can rationalize coming back to the party and supporting it because Trump is gone, which I think is a mistake. But
we will see what happens. That poll showing Ron DeSantis in the lead is from New Hampshire, not national.